Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily English Premier League podcast brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. And we have got a huge treat for you today. And joining me is Eshan. Eshan, 2 podcasts in a row, your first 2 podcasts. And I heard your ball knowledge in the last podcast. I'm putting that to the test today.
Okay, we'll see. Very excited to put that to the test myself. And yeah,
well, we've got a lot to get through. And the whole basis for today are the greatest blank in Premier League history. We may be here for some time. We'll try and get as much as we can in. Do you want to just get into it, Eshan?
I think we need to for time's sake.
Yeah, we do. I've put all of our categories. I've sent them out in the chat beforehand, and we've given him some time to prepare. I've got my answers as well, and we're going to be comparing, see how alike we think. Let's get into it. So, our first one, the greatest team in Premier League history. I'm not talking the greatest 11. I'm talking your Invincibles, your Centurions, your Arsenal 05s, your Liverpool's 2019s, your Man United's across the years. And, well, Eshan, I'll let you go first. Who, in your opinion, are the greatest team in Premier League history?
One of the things I love about myself is I think I'm primarily a football fan and then a United fan.
Okay.
However, in this specific scenario, I think I'm going to have to go with the Man United 2007 to 2009 team. Individually, they were scary. I think we were so solid all over the pitch, and I think you got to contextualize it with like we had like Wes Brown at right back, who for some reason had like a blinder of a season, crosses the ball to Cristiano Ronaldo to score in the Champions League final at the perfect height. Like there was moments in that season that were inexplicable, and they can, like I talked about in the last episode, how big momentum is. And that team had all the momentum during those 3 seasons. 2
back-to-back Champions League finals as well. But I just hate that team so much. And I'll tell you why. Because Liverpool 08-09 were absolutely incredible. That was the season we had. I mean, Pennant even was good that season, but we had Gerrard, Mascherano, and Alonso in midfield. We did the double over you. Fernando Torres had an absolute blinder every time he played Man United during that period.
Red card still haunts me a little bit.
The 2 wins in that season against you, and you still won the league. Yeah, and I'm so angry about that still to this point.
You should be. It's a little frustrating to take.
Yes. For me, I have to go with the Centurions. The thing is, you may not like how Pep Guardiola's play is, but that team was undeniably incredible. You know, the inverted fullbacks. And also, unfortunately, revolutionising football, because now loads of teams, even at Sunday League level, are trying to pass it out of the back now.
Southampton this season.
It's just it was unfortunately an unbelievable team, and the fact they did it all without a recognised striker in that season. You can make an argument for Gabriel Jesus, but we saw him playing on the wing. We know how Pep likes to rotate.
That positional flexibility.
It's the fact that he got the very best out of everyone in that team, you know, moving Stones into midfield for some of those matches. Who would have thought to do that? And it worked. You know, even Raheem Sterling, we see how awful he can be now. I never thought he was that good, but he was getting goals out of him. And I think that's a stroke of genius from Pep Guardiola more than anything. And for them to get into the 100s of points,
it's absolutely ridiculous. And you have to also contextualize it with the seasons that they didn't get to 100 points. They were still in the 90s. Like, they were not far off.
I know. And unfortunately, the second best team in that era, I think, is the best team in any other era. That Liverpool side, the 97-98 points finish, and losing by 1 point in 2 different seasons. That hurts me. But
especially in the manner that it happened in, it wasn't like either team like choked or had a single game where they were really off. Like every single game, both teams got over the line, game after game after game, and it was.
We only lost once all season, and it was against them.
Insane.
Anyways,
ridiculous.
but we'll now move on to the greatest Premier League 11. Now, this is going to cause some debates. All right. So I've got my team. Ishan's got his team. And we're going to go position by position, 4-3-3. And let's not try and do this whole thing where it's like, oh, okay, let's try and see if this team would work together as a cohesive unit or anything like that. I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, on paper, the greatest Premier League 11 ever. So I'll go first. Petr Cech in goal. Eshan, who's your goalkeeper?
This is not a good start at the episode because I'm usually a head over heart person, but Schmeichel, I think, was fantastic during those years.
He was good.
I think in terms of fear factor more than anything. Like you think about the way that opposition players would just view him, and you could see it, the way that they'd falter in front of him, that he'd win the initial battle before having to even do anything. And
Yeah,
I think that speaks to the magnitude of the man.
I mean, the reason I'm going for Petr Cech is just because of, prime Chelsea, how few goals they were conceding, and Petr Cech was the reason for a lot of that.
15
and his longevity as well. He went for so long. And, as a Liverpool fan, I feel like I'm doing a disservice here to Alisson. And I think Alisson now goalkeepers now are asked to do a lot more. They're asked to be good with their feet. They're asked to be very good off their line. Well, actually, no, they were asked to as well in the 2000s, but even more so now because of the high lines that we see.
Like first point of contact in a lot of plays.
Yeah, it's the high lines as well.
Yeah,
but the only thing in it for Alisson is the fact that he's injured a lot. And we've seen how good Kelleher is as well,
to back him up.
because of how often Alisson has been out. It seems like a luxury to have him at this point.
Yeah.
But prime Alisson, the saves he makes are just...
Longevity really matters. Like I just heard, the Fulham Manchester United game was on the weekend, and I heard Bernd Leno had done 97 games in a row, which is insane.
Crazy.
That's
crazy.
Almost 3 whole seasons.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to right back. Now, this is a very controversial one. I mean, for me, there are 4 players that come into mind here: Trent, Kyle Walker, Branislav Ivanovic, and Gary Neville. Have you gone for one of those 4?
I have.
Who have you gone
guess
for?
Which one I've gone for?
If it's Gary Neville, I'm going to terminate this podcast right now. Honestly.
I have gone for Trent. I think.
Okay, I've gone for Trent as well.
I think it's kind of inarguable. Like, yeah, you can complain about his defensive side, but aside from the United game this season where he got ran ragged, he's been very good defensively this season. I think he's not been getting his props on under Slot. He's definitely flipped a switch. I think it was the Brighton game earlier this season where I just saw him. I watched the last second half of that game, and it was a slog from Brighton, and he's just consistent. So I think he's adding that
definitely improved.
I think he's added
improved,
that to his game.
And I think a lot of the questions being asked of him in defense is a lot of the reason being because of Jurgen Klopp not really utilizing the fullbacks as your traditional fullbacks. Exactly. He didn't really ask them to run back that much.
Exactly.
And whenever Trent went up, you'd see sort of Henderson or Fabinho covering for him. Sometimes, Kanté or Matip, whoever it would be, would go across and help cover him.
Yeah, in the Klopp system, the wing backs are crucial. They provide width. Mane and Salah cutting in, Firmino dropping back. Trent, the outsides are now open for Robertson and Trent to fly forward.
Yeah, when Trent goes forward, I think he just
unrivaled.
For me, he's the best passer in the world. I think his range, even on the weekend, his cross into Gakpo just sums him up. He is so good going forward. He can dribble, he has confidence, and he has authority now in that. So the reason I didn't go for Kyle Walker is just because of what he can offer going forward, and also he is quite mistake prone. But the good aspects of his game on his day when he's sprinting back and no one can get past him. And his physicality,
the only defender that could even challenge Mbappe and Vinny during the last few years is Kyle Walker. The only one. They both have named him as that opponent for good reason.
Connor Bradley. Anyway, moving on to our two centre backs. So for me, it kind of writes itself. I've gone for Terry and Van Dijk. You know, I don't think Vidic was. I think with Vidic, you kind of look back on it with sort of rose-tinted glasses, and also his aesthetic. He was very aesthetically pleasing. Ferdinand was amazing as well. I want to give props to him, but with Ferdinand, I'm not a fan of the whole shouting at the referees thing, and the whole drug doping thing that he went through as well kind of tainted his career a bit for me. But as a player, he was incredible. But I'm just going with Terry because he was the captain in that Chelsea side that kept I've forgotten the exact number of clean sheets, but the most clean sheets in a Premier League season. I think they only conceded 16 goals all season, alongside Carvalho. Carvalho as well is another player that we have to give props
Carvalho.
to.
He was something like the two that I omitted because I think longevity is a big factor here is Yap Stam and Carvalho. I think those two, if they stayed longer in the league, could definitely
their peaks were unbelievable.
Their peaks were unbelievable. They also did great things in other teams as well, outside of Prem.
And in terms of Van Dijk, let me just go on to Van Dijk. I am a Liverpool fan, so this means a lot to me. I do apologise, Eshan. With Van Dijk, we saw the difference with the Liverpool side defensively when he got injured. The ACL against Everton when Pickford just
WWE.
It was awful, and we looked so much worse that season. And when he's on, he's so commanding. We saw him so many times in the Klopp era when we would have the high line and Van Dijk would be the only one back against like two players and they still couldn't score. He's so fast. He wins every header. And it's like, if you're an attacker, how do you beat him? You can't go around him because he's too fast and he'll just barge you out the way. Even beat Adama Traore in a foot race. You can't go through him because he's so big and you can't really, it's too awkward. And also, you can't really shoot because he'll read it. Yeah. And he's intimidating. It's like, how on earth do you beat Virgil van Dijk in a one-on-one situation? I don't think there's anyone no one in history, even Messi when he came up against him, he couldn't get past him. He'd have to sort of be slowed down and then eventually give up and pass it sideways. So I just think for that reason, not only is the best defender in Premier League history, but also one of the all-time best defenders, full stop.
Yeah, I concur with a lot of what you said. Van Dijk, I think the only caveat that I'd give to Van Dijk, and I think this is the problem with making a greatest 11, is I think he might have struggled a little more when there's like a higher propensity for what a foul is. So like the Vidic is not as like a great example, but if you think of like a Tony Adams, right? And that's sort of an era, how would Van Dijk perform? I'd love to see that. I feel like that might test him a little more, but
I disagree because I think football is softer now. I think you can. I mean, it took a lot more to get a red card back in the day than it does now. For example,
agreed. But like,
so
like, that's a like in. Paulo Maldini uses or does say, I guess, that if you've made a tackle, you've already gone wrong as a defender. That's his mentality, that silkiness. And I think Van Dijk definitely exudes that. But I would love to see him in an era where he was forced to be like this brash kind of like authoritarian figure. I'm just saying that from like a hypothetical. Like, how would that change his gameplay? But I agree that he's probably the greatest, especially aesthetically. Like, I think that first season when, like, I think the season after they bought him for the 75 mil, insane. Like, you just immediately saw the difference in the side of Liverpool and how much control they had and how much fear the opposition had in front of Van Dijk. He didn't get dribbled past for like a season. That's insane.
That's insane.
That's like
man of the match in a Champions League final as well.
Yeah.
So like he does it. He does it when he matters. He scored the winning goal in the League Cup final last season against Chelsea as well.
Was very close with going for Terry, but I went with Vidic. I think like
so Van Dijk and Vidic are your two.
Exactly. I think that like while I think in my eyes Vidic is slightly underrated in a lot of ways because I think he was that like point for a long time, and people also forget that he kind of flopped when he got there. Him and Ever both really, really struggled with the physicality of the league. They didn't know English. They like the whole team was clowning on them. The whole league was clowning on them. Like there was this a massive rhetoric against them. So I think once you start badly and you recover so well, it just goes to show the magnitude of the player and how great they truly are. But totally concede that Terry was fantastic and a very, very great player in his own right.
Right, left back. I think.
Agreement.
I think so. It's Ashley Cole, isn't it?
It's Ashley Cole, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I hate that because he's not a very good person, as we know.
Yeah.
Nearly crashing his car at only getting 55 grand a week, cheating on his wife.
Yeah. Insane.
But as a footballer, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Special mentions, in my opinion, though, to Dennis Irwin and
yes. I was close to Dennis Irwin.
Yeah, because he could take a good free kick. Even
also, people forget that Dennis Irwin is a right back. Like he played as a right back. The only time he played as a left back is the time he's known for because Ferguson was like play left back and
it worked.
And he's not going to disobey Ferguson because no one ever does.
And this is one of the most underrated players, I think, of the last 5 years, Andy Robertson. For me, I understand he's not having his best season this season, but last season he was unbelievable for us.
Agreed.
He has been consistent over a long period. He's got the second most assists in Premier League history from a defender, only losing out to Trent Alexander-Arnold. So
unfortunately,
I just think he's so underrated. Scotland captain as well, leadership qualities, and just doesn't stop running. And I think that goes
a proper engine on him. I would consider him in the honorable mention shout, but I don't think he's anywhere near all-time 11, unfortunately. I think Irwin pips him.
I think as an all-round package, I think he's better than Cole, in other qualities of the game. But it's a defense. And when it comes to defending, Ashley Cole is, far and away the best.
One-on-one, one of the few people to shut down Ronaldo.
Ronaldo said he was the hardest player to play against as well.
Yeah, exactly. It just says it all.
Now this is where it gets very complicated. Midfield. It's already been going on for 17 minutes. This episode.
Band-Aid real quick. De Bruyne, Gerrard, and Keane.
Okay.
I think De Bruyne technically is arguably the best. You talked about earlier about Trent being the best passer of the ball. I think De Bruyne clears not just him but everyone by such a stretch because he plays in the middle. Yeah, he drifts wide and he has amazing crosses. The goal, Sané against Stoke City, De Bruyne crosses the ball in and just skids across perfectly to Sané into his path.
I remember that.
One of the most jaw-dropping passes I've ever seen in my life. And I hate it because I'm a United fan, so I'm betting against them. I remember them signing De Bruyne and thinking, God, I hope he flops. I hope he flops. I hope he flops.
Yeah.
And then from 10 minutes in, he scored against us in the derby that season, and you're thinking oh God, please no. And then he goes on to be even better than any of us imagined. I think the fact that he's the one that stands on the shoulders of every single other midfielder in his generation. We talk about Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes, Keane, Vieira. They're in late 90s, early 2000s, all and then late 2000s for some of them, but all in this sort of era, and no one scratches the surface of De Bruyne. That to me
unbelievable.
Means he has to be in the midfield.
Yeah, he is just insane. He's you can't, and his shooting as well. You didn't really mention, but if you look at his goal catalogue, it's jaw dropping. See, you went for Gerrard as well. I feel like Gerrard's almost disrespected in a way because let's not forget, Gerrard was with us through thick and thin. When we were in debt in 2009 and we had to sell Xavi Alonso, we had to sell Javier Mascherano, we had to sell a load of players because we just didn't have the money until we were bought by FSG. Gerrard stayed with us through that time. He said no to Real Madrid. He said no to a better Chelsea. He said no to AC Milan, who were unbelievable at that time. And it's the fact that he didn't win the Premier League what is the reason why so many people wouldn't put him in their team. I think he's very unfairly treated by the slip incident, and it is what it is. But let's also not forget the fact that we did blow a 3-0 lead against Crystal Palace the week later. So you can't put it all down to that. Plus, the slip did happen in the first half.
There was plenty of time to recover.
As a player, he is just the sort of player in the team that is a manager's dream, because he will drag a team to I mean, we saw it in Istanbul. He scored the first goal and rallied everyone.
Yeah.
And his goal catalogue, his passing catalogue, is defending his skills. He has absolutely everything. He can play in any position in the pitch.
Yeah.
And he will be the best player of the match.
Footballer. Like, his understanding of the game, his reading, second to none. Like, even scored.
And also, he just did it in a worse team than everyone else. He could have easily gone to Real Madrid because they wanted him. Jose Mourinho tried to sign him multiple times. But he loved Liverpool. He wanted to captain us to everything. And, that 2007 side that played in the Champions League final, that 2005 side that played in the Champions League final against Milan, had no right to win that match. But it was him, and he's the reason.
If we're talking about like individual 11s of teams, that Milan side, just
unbelievable,
legend after legend.
Yeah, Pirlo, Kaká, and Gattuso midfield.
Yeah, Stam and Maldini centre back.
Shevchenko up front, Cafu at right back, Dida in goal. I mean,
legends.
Unbelievable. Anyway, we're getting off topic a little bit too much. We have actually been talking for 22 minutes. It's just coming up to now. We've still got so much to get through. This is going to run well over. But yeah, Gerrard for me. And you said Keane.
Yeah.
And I can completely understand that.
Yeah.
But I went for Scholes.
Interesting. I did not.
Okay, tell me why you went for Keane then.
I think Keane's leadership is like often like heralded as like his most important factor, and don't get me wrong, it probably is, right? But he was so defensively solid, the aggression, and he would pop in with like crucial attacks, send the ball forward. Like the treble winning season does not happen without Roy Keane. It just simply doesn't. And it's not just like, I'm not an expert, I was born the year after. Like this is a long time ago. But I know countless games in that season, he pushed that team to victory. He pushed them. He dragged them. Yes, there's individual players that get there, but often the heartbeat of a team is the midfield. I definitely considered Vieira because I would consider Vieira a technically better player than Keane. Like, he's 6'4", he's built like the biggest thing you can imagine. A
brick,
warhead. like he could destroy anything. But in my opinion, Keane comes out on top partly because he's smaller. He's 5'10", 5'11", holding down like...
I think he's even shorter than that, yeah.
Yeah, but point being, he held down the midfield of one of the best teams in Premier League history. And
if you want to talk short, Paul Scholes. What was he, 5'6"? But he had even despite his physical disadvantages, he dictated a team. He could pass the ball on a sixpence from 60 yards away. And it's just, it's also the fact that they showed Paul Scholes to the Barcelona academy when Xavi and Iniesta were there.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just the perfect central midfielder. Yeah, so that's why I go for him.
This might be conjecture, but Andrea Pirlo says that Scholes is his favorite player on the field, which just says it all. Someone who we like watching him, you think he has the greatest passing range. He has such an understanding of the game and a calmness. Yeah. And his person that he kind of looks up to is Paul Scholes. Like, insane to think about.
There's no wrong answer. And also, the fact that we've had to leave out Frank Lampard is just, the highest scoring midfielder of all time.
177 goals from midfield. That's absolutely insane.
I feel like I've done something wrong here, but,
If we could get them
we're a
all in,
couple of
we would.
podcasters, Anyway, so the front three now. And
Self-explanatory,
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I've gone Salah, Shearer, Henry. Have you gone the same thing?
Oh, I have gone Henry, Shearer, and Ronaldo. I think I honestly, I totally get the argument, and I can definitely concede it.
Listen,
But just the fact of what Ronaldo went on to do, and I realize it's so hard to like
that's
bring into
why
it.
I've gone for Salah.
Yeah, because
Ronaldo was a mainstay in that Man United. I mean, he was the best player in the world at Man United. He won the Ballon d'Or. But if you're talking about the best Premier League legacy, who's just going to go down further? Mo Salah. Since joining us in 2017, he has been on fire every single season. Last season, he only got something like 18 goals in the Premier League, and that was seen as a failure by his standards. He is asked to do so much. How many wingers score that many goals a season? I know he's not really a traditional winger, but he still comes off the right-hand side, and everyone knows what he's going to do.
He spends plenty of time on the right wing. Like, I think he doesn't get...
Everyone knows what he's going to do, but he still does it.
Yeah.
He's a freak of nature. I understand the Ronaldo argument, but
exactly,
it's Salah.
This is the problem with like the greatest 11 topics. Is like you want to have like a conversation with a clear-cut winner, but there's not.
Yeah.
I can definitely concede how great Salah, especially if we look at this season, 19 goals and 13 assists, and we are not out of January. What are you talking about? Those are insane numbers. Like, and it's not just the numbers; it's the efficacy of how like every single game he's at it. Even an off game from Salah, like I guarantee the left back is panting at halftime.
We saw how much even Leif Davis. He was meant to be the Championship's brightest star last season, and he just couldn't touch him. Couldn't get near him.
Dragged that first half.
I mean, we saw what he did to Lisandro Martinez as well on the big occasion. He does it in the big matches as well. So
Salah against United has been. I like.
Yeah, you know very well how good he is against Man United.
Like that. Too many bad memories of him just terrorizing us.
Getting booked for taking his shirt off at Old Trafford against Man United more times than Man United have scored in recent years at Old Trafford against Liverpool. So I love that stat.
Yeah.
Okay, Shearer, we all know we don't need to talk about Shearer. 260 goals, it goes without saying, and it feels so harsh to leave out so many great strikers, but it's the greatest goal scorer in Premier League history. So
this leads us into who I would consider our next topic of greatest player in the Premier League.
Greatest player in Premier League history. Thierry Henry. It's just like he's one of those players where he just has absolutely everything. Pace.
Like
va-va-voom. Yeah. There you go.
He's like, I've never been so mesmerized watching a player, like especially like having not really experienced him, because I got into football like 2007, 2008 when he was already at Barcelona. So I'm hearing whispers. Like you think like, how good is this guy? And then you just watch like 5 minutes of any game, like he's like, he wants the ball. He wants to be that guy. He takes the ball and he'll just go past people effortlessly. The way he glides.
And that goal against Spurs as well, when he ran the entire pitch.
Oh, like also like side note,
Carragher said himself that he's the greatest forward in Premier League history, and he's played against all sorts.
I love the goal against Spurs because you can see like Jamie Redknapp in the midfield, and he just like flew past him, and I love that.
It's unbelievable. Okay, so our next topic, the most underrated player in Premier League history. Listen, I had my mind. It's one of these ones where my mind went blank, so I just went for a personal choice of mine from the Liverpool days.
Go ahead.
Jorginho Wijnaldum.
Great shout.
He is so underrated. I mean, he had these flashes in midfield where he would spin someone and then pass the ball 60 yards.
Yeah.
He had these sort of flashes mid-match. It was like, God, am I watching Zinedine Zidane or something? He was consistent as well.
Yeah.
He wasn't injured much. Obviously, things went downhill for him once he left Liverpool, went to Roma. he had his problems there, and now he's in Saudi Arabia still.
Yeah,
I
and
think.
he was actually also fantastic at Newcastle. I think that
Oh, he was
like
good at Newcastle. Yeah.
like the fact that Liverpool also got him for cheap, I think adds
Mm.
to the lore of him. I think it just the fact that he's also involved in the 4-0 rout of Barcelona. Uh,
Yeah.
he doesn't
2 goals.
he doesn't get enough flowers, and I completely agree with
I
you.
actually went more mad for his second goal than the
Yeah,
actual corner taken quickly.
yeah.
And it's because it's like you've made it, you've done it now.
Yeah,
You're back
exactly.
level terms,
Back
and
on level
with
terms. It was also 1-0 at halftime. Like
yeah,
that's still 3 goals to go to win it.
and we also didn't have Salah in that game, and I can't remember if we're missing Firmino or Mane. I
Yeah,
think
you're definitely missing one of the two because
one of the two. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I
Honestly,
remember
that's
thinking
really
like
poor from me.
beforehand, there's no chance. Like
Mm,
I've
I didn't
never
expect it. No.
so surreally let them go, especially how that first leg went.
Yeah.
That
So who's
Messi
your most underrated player then, Eshan?
I'm gonna go. I think a common answer and an honorable mention is Olivier Giroud. I think
Yeah,
he's a
he was
lot
great.
of center backs' worst nightmare for good reason. I think he goes into it. So I shout out to him, but I'm gonna go with Moussa Dembele. I think Mu-
That's
I think
so annoying because he's one of my choices for the later categories as well, and I'm really annoyed you've brought him up and before
uh,
I got to.
we can pretend I didn't bring it up when we get to it.
Okay.
But he has to be he's my quintessential underrated player because we talked a little off camera about this, but I think he what he does so few players are able to do in today's game where he's able to really really bully people off the ball. He's really
Mm,
able to if you can have a player that wins 8 to 9 duels out of the 10,
yeah,
he's worth his weight in gold because you can't like you can't fathom that. That's something that has to happen consistently on a
yeah.
I think he was doing it game in, game out. But yeah, he would be my shout
He,
for underrated player.
yes, and that moves us on to a similar category. I mean, you talk about underrated, but the greatest individual season in Premier
Yeah,
League history. And I'm going to go first for this one.
go ahead.
It's so obvious. It is so obvious. Luis Suarez,
Yeah.
2013-14.
Oh, I
Can I
never
just
get
say, he
that.
scored, what was it, 31 goals that
Yeah,
season. He missed the first, I can't remember how many goals, but games rather. He
yeah,
missed a
yeah,
few games earlier in the season because of the ban that he got for biting
yeah,
Ivanovic.
exactly.
Completely unjust and joking. But but it's the fact that he got that many goals, the catalogue of goals he got that year, and he didn't take any penalties. I just don't understand how this man was. People say his prime was at Barcelona. No, his prime was in that season when he scored hat trick again. That 4-goal game he got against Norwich City.
It's the best
The
4 goals I've ever
the
seen in my
goal
life.
he got against Newcastle when he took it down on his shoulder
Yeah,
from the pitch pass
yeah,
from Jose Enrique, whilst being against Fabrizio Colaccini and Tim Krul. No, not a couple of players to be sniffed at,
yeah.
but
Colasino will
it's
do
just
everything to put him
I
off too.
I don't think there has been a more exciting player to watch in the Premier League than Luis Suarez. Just because every time he got the ball, you just thought, "Oh God, he's got to do something here," and
Yeah,
people didn't know how to deal with him because he'd scored so many different type of goals as well.
I think yeah, we talked about it earlier with Gerrard, but the slip in Istanbul really took a little bit of gloss off the season when it shouldn't have. I think we talk about these individual seasons, and it's an individual season. We gotta
Yeah,
rate it in that time, and that season, Suarez was everything. Like he was
yeah.
going
That
everywhere.
Newcastle game
But
might have not been that
I'm
season
gonna
actually,
give
but still.
another honorable shout because I think the greatest season, in my opinion, and this is with the caveat that I wasn't watching game in game out, but from what I hear, Henry 2003, 2004, where
Yeah,
he gets 20 assists or something crazy like that,
yeah.
and it's still a league record at the time of recording. Um, I think that's the greatest. I'm gonna even honorable mention to the one of the seasons where I was watching week in week out, where I was thinking, what is happening here. Gareth Bale, 2012,
Oh, okay.
2013.
Yeah.
Every game, he was dragging them. Like, I think that's why I would put him in that honorable mention category, because that was not the Pochettino Spurs side. That was an average Spurs side that he was
Yeah.
dragging game after game. There's the particular moment that I flash back to many times is they were drawing 2-2 away at West Ham, and you're thinking the game is slipping away from them. He's like 30, 35 yards, and he launches it top corner, spins perfectly into the upper 90 of it. And I think, how many players can really do that? How many players can really smash a ball like that hard, game in, game out? Borderline Messi-esque in the way that the whole team revolved around him. The whole team was like, give the ball to him, he'll do something.
And he was an athlete as well.
Yeah.
I mean, just how fast he could run. I mean, what comes to my mind is that goal against Barcelona, obviously, when I think about Bale.
Yeah.
You know, when he went off the pitch and ran around Bartra. And he also, as a Liverpool fan, I know how good Bale is.
Yeah.
That game still hurts me, mainly because of Karius, not as much because of Bale, because I actually like Gareth Bale a lot.
Wow, maybe one of the best individual Champions League performances of all time. I also
probably
think
the best.
Crucial context to this is when he moved from Southampton to Spurs. I think they went like 24 or 25 matches without winning with Gareth Bale in the team, and so there was this. All the Spurs fans, all the Prem fans were talking about this like massive hoodoo on Bale. They were thinking like. Is he a jinx? Is he like the Jack Rodwell? You know, like that was the category of player he was compared to. You know, and going on to become a world record transfer because of a single season at Spurs. It's I think we've scarcely seen anything like that.
Yeah, he was just he was special. Okay, now 37 minutes in. This is probably the latest break in GSPN history, talking about greatest things ever. But after the break, we'll be back to talk about more of the greatest blank in Premier League history.
Do you have a story that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? Well, it might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes the ums, as, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Well, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. It's a unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. Right, so moving on. This episode is probably going to go over an hour at this rate. We might get into trouble here.
It'll be worth it.
It will be worth it. So this is a category where I've had to write all of these out to read out, just because, you know, I personally love. This is probably my favourite one. The greatest goal in Premier League history. I'm going to read out all of the choices that we were able to come up with together, and we'll see where we get to. So, David Beckham's halfway line goal versus Wimbledon, Aguero's last-minute title-winning goal versus Queen's Park Rangers, Luis Suarez's shoulder goal versus Newcastle, Papiss Cissé's outside-of-the-foot volley versus Chelsea, Wayne Rooney's bicycle kick versus Manchester City, Garnacho's bicycle kick versus Everton, Jack Wilshere's team goal versus Norwich. I absolutely love that one. Dimitri Payet's goal from the free kick against Crystal Palace. James Ward-Prowse's knuckleball free kick versus Wolves. Vincent Kompany's last-minute winner versus Leicester City. Andros Townsend's volley versus Manchester City. Alisson's last-minute header against West Bromwich Albion. It's such a shame that happened during COVID. Imagine. Dennis Bergkamp's weird trickery versus Newcastle. Kasami's weak-footed volley versus Crystal Palace. I mean, that is definitely the most underrated on this list. Olivier Giroud's pushgas winning scorpion kick versus Crystal Palace. Dele Alli's sort of flick goal against Crystal Palace, the volley. John Arnaris's sledgehammer free kick versus Manchester United. And Paolo Di Canio's Di Canio kick versus Wimbledon. I think it was Wimbledon. I couldn't find exactly who it was. Plenty of choice there, Eshan.
Oh,
Where do we start?
Let's just start by acknowledging what a gift to the Premier League all of those goals were. And there's so many more that you could add to. Like some of the goals we've seen over the years, and I think we're now seeing the return of some of these long goals. I think long range goals. I think we've seen like last few years, like systemic stuff, and I think it's slowly dying and slowly coming away. And
I know what you mean.
Shots again. And you got to.
Do you know what I'm? Do you know what I'm also thinking? You know, some of the goals that I haven't mentioned, some of the moments I haven't mentioned. You know, Mane's hat trick in 2 minutes against Southampton. For Southampton. You could also mention Danny Rose's volley on his debut for Spurs. I mean, there are so many to choose from, but I've had to narrow it down to these.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to include Robin van Persie's volley against Norwich, but I still thought that's probably not got a chance of winning either.
Yeah. Do you mean the one against Villa?
Was it Villa? Sorry.
Yeah.
Where Wayne Rooney sent the ball across the pitch.
Yeah. Because that was the one that won us the title in that season as well. So,
what a goal! What a goal!
Beautiful goal to watch.
Are you ready to choose yours? Yes.
I have a top three.
You've got a top three. Okay,
let's hear your top three. That's a good way to go about it. I'm going to go at third with Kasami versus Crystal Palace. I'm
so glad you mentioned that because that really doesn't get enough recognition.
I think if he was a player that did even slightly more productivity, I think it would get a little more credit. I think because he's just such a random name and such a random moment.
Yeah.
I in my opinion, I think that makes the goal even better because it's that one moment out of a million, you know?
Yeah,
it's truly unique, and
with his weak foot as well.
Like who tries that? You know, like I think
exactly.
Jermaine Defoe did something like not like even close to that, but like similar from a certain angle, and that's like Jermaine Defoe, like a specialist who could hit the corner. You know, this is Kasami. Like I don't know what he's done, but all
right, you're number two now.
I struggle between this top two. I think this is the hardest part for me. I'll just give you the top two. Wilshere versus Norwich.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be second. The number one is Cisse versus Newcastle.
Okay.
It was such a hard decision. I was not
expecting that. I wasn't expecting you to say Cisse. I mean, with Cisse, it's like... I remember at the time it was like... luck,
but it was...
And against Petr Cech in goal.
I think that's what makes it 100 times greater. Is like it's Petr Cech, and like I've watched that goal back thousands of times, and there's a slice of luck to it, of course, but he tries that. Like that's 1,000% his like effort, and he's like he sees him slightly, not even off his line, just slightly to his near post, which he should be. You know, like that's the position of the goalkeeper.
It's one of those things as well. It's like if your player tries that, you're just furious with them for even thinking of doing that. It's like, come on, you're meant to be disciplined. You're playing in the Premier League. Let's stop aiming for these back pages. But he pulls it off. And it's from such a weird angle as well. For Jack Wilshere, on the other hand, I prefer that goal to the Cisse one just because I think it's so like it's pure beautiful football.
Yeah,
you know, threading it through Giroud and Wilshere. Like you heard the commentators struggling to keep up with who it is.
Yeah,
it's I don't care about the context. That in any context, that goal is just it should be put in the Louvre.
I struggled so much with this because like historically I've always thought Cisse was the better goal. I've always had this but the one that has more rewatchability is the Wilshere goal, especially that last pass when he beats the offside trap. It's just him ready to pop it open. Like, it was Barcelona-esque. It was like simpatico. It was like they knew exactly what they were doing and they would bring it into feet.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So my goal, I haven't gone for a top three. I've just gone for one, and it's Sergio Aguero versus QPR.
Interesting.
And I understand that it may not be the most beautiful goal.
Yeah.
However, what it meant, I mean, this was back in the day, you know, a lot of City fans won't remember this now, but Manchester City weren't always winning everything.
Yeah.
They had to fight from 2-1 down. It was 90 minutes and the game ended 3-2 and it won them the league. It will. I mean, the only thing that's happened similarly in not even Premier League football history, but in the top division of English football was the Arsenal one 2-0 in 1989, I think 1990.
Oh yeah,
Michael
against
Thomas.
Liverpool. Yeah,
against Liverpool at Anfield.
Yeah,
so, and that's the only example I can think of to compare it to. But this was absolutely everything for Manchester City. And also the fact that Balotelli only ever got one assist and that was it.
Yeah,
it makes it that much better. But the limbs afterwards
the
and
commentary,
most people can recite that commentary from memory. I swear you'll never see anything like this ever again. So watch it, drink it in. That one.
Yeah.
Special mention to Dennis Bergkamp versus Newcastle, obviously. I mean, that is just...
also special mention to Rooney versus City.
Special mention to all of them, really.
Like, they're all just fantastic.
That's why I mentioned them all. Okay, we'll move on from that category. Yeah. Sorry. We're 46 minutes in and we've still got a few more to get through.
Okay.
All right. So, biggest betrayal in Premier League history from a player. I'm just... To make this easier, we've ruled out Sol Campbell.
Yeah.
In fact, make it harder even. We've ruled out Sol Campbell because that's obviously... I mean, the fact that he left on a free to their bitter rivals and he lifted the trophy for them at his old stadium. It's so bad, isn't it? It's really bad.
I still find it befuddling that he doesn't understand that they're still mad about this. That's
I think he does. I think he does.
I think he should like empathize 100 times more. Like the fact that he's like he had an ad recently for like ads and or something like that where he's just housing it the whole time. It's absolutely insane.
Okay, we're gonna have to bleep that out, Eshan. Thank you very much.
Totally forgot.
It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. I'll put an edit on it. But. With Sol Campbell, we kind of have to rule it out. And also, have you seen that advert he did?
That's
Google Pipstall?
That's what I'm saying. Like that
so
was
funny,
hilarious.
Wearing a red jumper in that video the entire time.
My biggest betrayal, and this is pretty personal to me, is Carlos Tevez going to Man City with the "Welcome to Manchester" sign. That "Welcome to Manchester" sign, I saw it. I saw it in Manchester, and it still haunts me. I still think about it. Like I will stuff of nightmares. I'd close my eyes and it would just flash up, you know?
Well, my equivalent of that would probably be Fernando Torres, but that's not who I've gone with. But Carlos Tevez, I completely forgot about that one. Yeah. I think for me, it's another one from North London, but this one against Arsenal, Robin van Persie, because he was absolutely loved by Arsenal fans, loved. And then he goes to Manchester United, at the time their rivals, you know, they were competing at the time. He scores against Arsenal and celebrates like he never played for them. And also, was it for Robin van Persie where they applauded him at the end of the season?
Oh yeah, it was the tunnel because that was the game after Villa.
The ultimate. I mean, just imagine your old. God, I would fall asleep like you mentioned and just have nightmares about that if I was an Arsenal fan.
Yeah. Sorry to the Arsenal
quite
fans
a few in that era.
I know we suffered the seasons after that, but that one season, Fergie's last season, made it all worth it. Like that was bellissimo.
Yeah, they had Cesc Fabregas during that time. They had Samir Nasri. They probably had more. I mean, Who was that?
not a
Was
good
that
time for the
Koscielny that left them and burnt their shirts and left it in a bin or something when in the
Yeah, I think it might
announcement
have
video
been.
of. Oh
I think it
God! I
might have
mean,
been.
Arsenal fans, I've empathised with them for what they had to put up with. Okay,
God, to put up
now
with.
we're going to go with our personal most painful moments. Eshan's a United fan. I'm a Liverpool fan. Eshan, what's your personal moment of
This is
hurt?
a personal moment. This is also like I had seen the welcome to Manchester sign from Carlos Tevez a few months before, so like
Hmm.
I'm getting this inkling that City are rising, but like you're not too worried about it because it's City, right? Like what are they gonna do? United won, City 6 at Old Trafford in 2011, early
Ooh,
October. Um,
eesh.
that I was overseas on that trip. Um, I was checking the scores in BBC. I saw the score at like 70 or 80 minutes in, like 3-1 down,
Mhm.
and I was like, this is the worst. I can't imagine this. Like, this is, I've never seen anything like this. And then I refreshed a few minutes later, and we're 6-1 down. And I broke down. I don't think I've ever really broke down like that as a football
Imagine
fan at
watching
all.
it.
Yeah. I'm glad my eyes were averted.
So is that worse than 7-0 for you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Also, you got to
Okay.
contextualize it like age-wise. I was 10 years old when
Okay.
Liverpool beat United 7-0. I had been so used to disappointment as a United fan that I went out and had like a steak lunch at my friend's birthday party and had a great time afterwards. Whereas the
Okay.
6-1, I could
Well,
not even palate
fair
it.
enough. See, you say that, but my most painful moment is actually from when I was 17 years old, so, like not that long ago.
True.
So mine is not the slip. I just want to say that mine is not the slip,
Interesting.
and most people would think,
It is that.
what? How is it not the slip? My most painful moment is losing the league to Manchester City on the last day of the season when they played against Aston Villa after being 2-0 down.
I was about to mention that when you mentioned the Aguero, like
Yeah, that
that.
was absolutely heartbreaking for me
Oh,
because not only were Manchester City losing, Felipe Coutinho scored, who was my favourite player at one point,
yeah.
and Gerrard was the manager.
Yeah.
I thought, this
It's
is
written in the stars.
perfect sense. This makes perfect sense. It's like written in the stars. And then Ilkay
Yeah.
Gundogan does that.
Yeah.
And with that moment, I thought, okay, well, at least we still have the Champions League final. Then we lost that to Real Madrid.
Yeah.
So, it was one thing after the other.
Yeah.
It was the end of the 2022 season as a whole. And I do not care. It's like I almost forgot
Yeah.
how much I cared about winning the FA Cup and the League Cup that season. I know that sounds spoilt, but
Yeah, but you had the quadruple
those are the ones I
on.
cared about
You had the
less.
quadruple, like no team in history has really had the quadruple on.
No team in
You're
history has
2
won the
games away.
quadruple. Simple as that.
Um,
Okay.
and a quick mention: Salah scoring in that last minute when he thought he'd won the league, against Wolves.
Yeah.
The kicker.
was-
That was.
And then,
I mean, good
and then
for United.
Fan
for
tells
them,
him,
that was
and
hilarious.
God, that was so
But
sad.
yeah,
It's like I'm reliving it as you
you're
mentioned
back
that.
there. Vivid flashbacks.
Yeah. Okay, so our next topic. Oh my goodness. Our next topic. So we have been ranking the big 5 Premier League managers of all time, the top 5, in order. So that's Sir Alex Ferguson, Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, and Arsene Wenger.
All right, do you want to just go fifth to first, or?
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll go first then.
All right.
So in 5th, I've gone Arsene Wenger. I
That's
just
fine.
think people love him because he was with Arsenal for so long and he sort of changed the game a bit. He brought all of these health rules in from Japan and, really made sure footballers were taking care of themselves a lot more. And he had success in the late 90s and early 2000s. But it's the years after that. He had so much time, but he was just being so frugal with his spending. I know it's not all down to him, but he's often credited with that ideal.
Yeah.
But I just think, I know that he had the FA Cups and everything, but he wasn't actually that successful post Invincibles.
The only caveat I'd say to that is that while he wasn't successful, he did drag Arsenal to the Champions League season after season after season. I would say that he overstayed his welcome. I think
Yeah.
I'm all for long-serving managers, but there comes a point where you're doing the institution a disservice. You're like when a manager, like this is what we've been doing with United since Ferguson. When a manager represents the institution so well, if he stays winning, yeah, that's great. But thus, there will always be the power vacuum once they leave. And Arsenal not only had to deal with that, but Wenger himself, eventually couldn't keep Arsenal in the Champions League, and they were just dumped in the Europa League.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why he's fifth. In fourth, I think the real contingency of our list, I think first and second are pretty nailed on.
Yeah.
It's third and fourth. I'm struggling with this a lot.
I've gone Mourinho fourth, Klopp third.
I have gone Mourinho third, Klopp fourth.
Okay. All right. You go first. Why do you think Mourinho is better than Klopp?
Well, I'd say they're polar opposites of managers. I'd say Mourinho is a manipulative. He treats his players like objects, whereas Klopp is all about the empathy. He's all about treating his players with compassion, giving them the day or weekend off to go see their kid. Mourinho will be like, I'll give you 30 minutes, and he'll time him.
I don't think he's like that anymore. I think he's back in the day. Yes, I see where you're coming from.
But this is what we got to this is right after winning the Champions League with Porto. He comes in that first press conference. He says, people are calling me arrogant. This is not a direct quote, but close enough. People are calling me arrogant. I'm not arrogant. I'm just the best. I am the special one. Like that, coming in with that arrogance and then backing
he definitely
it
had
up.
the best press conferences out of the 5.
Yeah, I think there's such a plus. We got to contextualize it with. Yes, Liverpool are a sleeping giant that Klopp awoke, and that is great. But Chelsea were not.
I disagree with that.
Or point being, they have history. That that's
fine.
They 18 titles, 19 titles. Hopefully not 20 this season.
Yeah.
But Chelsea were not that. Mourinho came in and put his stamp on it. Apparently, according to reports, he had his eye on Chelsea even before the Porto victory in the Champions League.
Wow.
And he had been to dinner with Roman Abramovich, and Jorge Mendes, his agent, got him that dinner. And I've never seen what he's done before. I think coming into a league is always daunting for anyone. But to take all the cameras, to take all the attention, to have that much charisma and class, and also somehow be this wild conspiracy theorist that takes the heat off his players.
Yeah.
I think that is something we'll never see him again. You also got to contextualize it with this is the era of tabloid journalism. This is the era where journalism has these echo chambers through magazines, through there's so much talk, and I think Mourinho was quintessential for that period.
Okay, so, let me tell you why I think Klopp is better, right?
Okay.
So let's also take into context, Liverpool were awful before Klopp came in. We had Brendan Rodgers, and we relied only on Luis Suarez during that time. As soon as Suarez left, we had Coutinho, who was great, and then a kind of average squad. We had some players that were good. Sturridge was excellent, but he was always injured. And our defense was pretty bad as well. So, and when Klopp came in, he brought in this sort of idea of gegenpress and rock and roll football. Like you said, the polar opposite to Mourinho, and just entertaining to watch. You were excited to watch Liverpool again. And you could expect us to go and get some big results against some bigger teams just because of how he played. Mourinho just sat back, and I don't think while it was effective, it was awful to watch. It was really boring. Everyone kept on saying boring Chelsea, so on and so forth. But another reason why I think Klopp is better is just because Klopp was in the wrong era. He had City and
Yeah.
if City didn't exist, Klopp would be seen as
Yeah.
head and shoulders above Mourinho and Wenger. We got 97 points in a season and only
Yeah.
lost once all season, and that is
Unheard
it's
of.
just so unfair. It's really unfair on
It really
Klopp.
is.
He won the Champions League with us. He got us to back-to-back finals in 2018 and 2019. He got us to the final again in 2022. He won everything with us, barring the Europa League. And that's the least of his worries. And he was so likable as well. He really treated his players with trust and compassion, like you mentioned. And it's a shame he didn't win more, because I think,
Yeah.
he's basically won 3 Premier League titles if you think about it, just because he lost by 1 point on 2 occasions.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that
Heartbreaking.
2019-20 season, everyone says, "Oh, it's a COVID title. It doesn't really matter." We were like something like 20, 30 points clear
Yeah.
before COVID hit.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you want us to do?
Yeah.
So I that's why I think Klopp's just a bit better than Mourinho.
I think
Um,
Klopp is my favorite manager on the list. Even
Yeah.
like in terms of the magnanimous presence, the normal one, that whole mindset. I think
the whole thing.
in terms of a person that I would want to interact with, I would want to have like dinner with. Klopp is
Okay.
the best. Anyways, top 2.
So then top 2, Pep and Sir Alex Ferguson.
Sir Alex is top.
I think I don't think we really need to expand on that.
Yeah.
We've already talked about Pep's best Centurion team as the first topic.
Exactly.
And you could go through several Manchester United. The one thing I hate about Sir Alex though is the sort of integrity of the game that he didn't keep. The screaming at the fourth official. His players. Have you ever seen that video of Manchester United being given a penalty for the first time in over a season, and all of the players were just running after the referee, getting in his face?
Yeah.
And that's the problem I have with Sir Alex. His players were just animals, and he encouraged that. And I think but it was effective, and
Agreed.
it worked.
Agreed. Again, not a rhetoric that I would like to personally endorse, but yeah, you take them.
It
when you win
worked.
titles.
And it made Manchester United into the biggove club in England. So that's unfortunately it worked.
The
So
reality of the
anyway,
situation.
we'll move on now to a final couple of topics. Let's not take too long on this, because I've just seen how long we've been recording for.
Oh my goodness.
We're gonna get in trouble. So the biggest Premier League flop of all time. I hope there's a way of making this into chapters just so they can skim through.
Okay.
We'll try and do that to our YouTube channel. The biggest Premier League flop. Would you like to go first, or shall I go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Quick shout out to Radamel Falcao, who I thought would save United. I was convinced. That was the one that was like, we're cursed. Andrei Shevchenko. I think.
Okay. Yes.
I think it was destined to fail in a lot of ways, and I think Roman Abramovich always wanted this world class type of figure. Jose Mourinho would never let him, because Mourinho needs to be the star. Still, crazy the drop off. This is a Ballon d'Or winner. This is no mean player. This is the figurehead of arguably the best individual based team of all time, in the Milan team, and he does nothing. He does nothing in the Prem, and I think that's such a shame for the Prem.
Same with Crespo as well.
Yeah. Crespo the same.
I mean, Chelsea have had their fair share of failing strikers over the years. I mean, remember Gonzalo Higuain?
Oh yeah, I can't. That was such an odd.
You just forgot he played for them.
Yeah.
But my biggest Premier League flop is also a Chelsea striker, a bit more recent, Romelu Lukaku.
Interesting.
I understand that I might be being a bit harsh, but you look at the price tag, 97.5 million. And they sold him for 25 million after 26 Premier League appearances and only 8 goals. There was that match against Crystal Palace where he only got 6 touches in an entire game.
Yeah.
Or 7 touches, whatever it was. And he was just being clowned. And then 2 weeks after signing, he does that interview
Yeah,
where he says, "Coming to Chelsea was a mistake. I want to go back to Inter."
yeah,
He
insane,
spent 100 million on this player,
insane.
and it's just comical. This was during the time where Chelsea really needed to have their players performing because they had the entire reshuffle once Todd Boehly came in,
Yeah,
and Romelu Lukaku was their biggest signing.
yeah,
And for him to do that, I cannot believe
absolutely insane.
it doesn't get talked about more. It's like,
That is
what more
one
do
of
you
the, like,
what more do you want?
craziest interview choices I've ever seen in my life, because people often forget that that was not a bad Chelsea team. Like on paper, they had a lot of good talent, and they had Thomas Tuchel as manager.
Yeah,
Like
amazing manager. And they
fantastic
just won the
manager.
Champions League as
They
well.
just won the Champions League. There was a lot going for them. Yes, you can consider them a cup team, but I don't know if it was that season or the next season. But they got to in Liverpool's quadruple season, they got to both of those finals, the FA Cup final and the League Cup final. This is a
Yeah,
big team. This is a big team, and to
yeah,
tank
and they
your,
only lost
like,
on penalties both times.
yeah, and to tank your like Chelsea career, like a couple weeks, a couple months in, um, insane. So completely on board with that.
I think he played in that final and took a penalty and scored, to be fair, but he did nothing else all match.
Yeah, yeah,
And you could just tell the way he played, his heart wasn't in it. And I
yeah.
think for you to spend that much money on someone and have them not want to put in the effort in training or in
When he's
matches,
like
even.
kissing the badge for this club that he's like signed at 18 years old. So the fact that you have that lore behind it, where he's like, I need to reprove stuff, and gives up that fast, was
Yeah,
absolutely insane.
I understand he loves Italian football. I mean, he's having an okay time at Napoli. In fact, he's having a pretty good time at Napoli at the moment. 9 goals in 20 matches. But yeah, he just suits Italian football. He doesn't really suit the Premier League.
But
I mean,
that's
I
why
remember when he was at
don't
Man
come back.
United as well. Everyone was making fun of his first touch, but
Yeah,
um, yeah, that Chelsea transfer, I don't think it's talked about enough how bad that was.
yeah, and he was
Okay,
fantastic at Inter Milan the previous season.
okay. So greatest transfer of all time on the completely other side of the coin. Do you want to go first, or shall I go first?
You go first. Let me hear what you got.
Okay, Eric Cantona.
Oh, great.
£1.2 million, and he was the start of the Manchester United dynasty.
Yeah,
I think he just changed the game, and he had that sort of aura about him. And he was heavily involved in Manchester United's success in the 90s. And the one season they didn't do as well is when he was suspended for kicking the Crystal Palace fan.
exactly. 4
So
out of 5 seasons.
I mean, I'm sure you can talk more about Eric Cantona than I can, I'm
Yeah,
assuming, as a Manchester United
when
fan.
when Sir Alex Ferguson had organized this deal, like I think Leeds came in for a United player or something, and then they were organized. Like he just like kind of slyly mentioned, "What if we got Eric Cantona?" And Brian Kidd, the assistant at the time, heard 1.2 million for Cantona, and he said, "Did he have a leg chopped off or something? Like what happened? You know, like how are we getting him like for such a cheap amount?" And Sir Alex Ferguson gave him the perfect environment. That's what Sir Alex Ferguson was the best at, was man management. He treated Eric how he needed to be treated. He knew that's what he needed. Yeah, I
And look
completely concur.
how it turned out.
Yeah, United would not be in the place United would be without Eric Cantona.
Absolutely not. Okay, your greatest transfer ever.
These are kind of similar, so I'm going to mention both. N'Golo Kanté and Riyad Mahrez, for what they did for Leicester City and how cheap they were. I think Mahrez was like 400, 500K, and N'Golo Kanté was like something like 800,000 or something. Like they were both sub a million.
That's unbelievable.
These two, like what N'Golo Kanté does for a team, that Makelele position, that Kanté position, is almost impossible to teach. And they had actually signed him as like a more attacking center mid, I think, which is insane to think about, because when you think of Kanté, it's like discernible from the CDM position. He just covers the ground. It's like the perfect sweeper. So I'm going
Everyone
with
was making
those. And
everyone
Mahrez,
making jokes at the time.
Everyone talks about his first touch, but it's not just the first touch. It's the way that he like drifted in, and in a lesser team that like went through the league and got stronger after each game, Mahrez was like at the thick of it. Like
He was magic.
I think the game that nailed them on is like they're gonna win the title is when they went to City and won 3-1, and Mahrez was man of the match. Like,
Yeah, he was.
oh,
I mean, he doesn't really get as much respect as he deserves now that he's
could
moved
be an
on.
underrated player, to be honest.
He could be. He honestly could be, but he was just.
Yeah.
And you know, that Leicester City title winning season, it's almost incredible still to think that it happened. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at the team and you see some individual players, and the people you look to are Kanté, Mahrez, and Vardy. And
This is
it's
like,
weird because Kanté didn't really get as much credit until he went to Chelsea, and then
Yeah.
we saw, okay, well, now we see why Leicester won the title because
Yeah,
of
yeah,
this energy.
absolutely
And
insane.
you know, everyone
wins a
talks
World
about his
Cup.
defensive skills, but he's really, really good at dribbling as well.
Yeah,
you know, his turning
exactly.
is so
Receiving it
intelligent.
off the center backs, being able to play out. I think it's super
Yeah.
important.
Even for France at the World Cup, you know, we
Yeah.
were still thinking, well, he's well into his 30s now. He's playing in Saudi Arabia. He won't be able to do it. And then he did really well in the Euros for France.
Yeah. Fantastic player. Nothing
Okay,
negative to say about
just 2 more categories. 17 minutes in. The biggest what-if player. This is where I can talk about Moussa Dembélé, because I just think with Dembélé, if he just put a bit more effort in and he really sort of got his potential, the best out of himself, he would be, you know, he already was incredible, but imagine how insane that would have been.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going to go with Dembélé. You've already mentioned him, so I won't go too
He
far.
definitely had a higher level to hit, and it would have been nice to see him like really play week in week out for a big team. That was like
Yeah.
I wish I had. My what if player is Ledley King. I think Ledley King
Ooh.
would have been in that conversation of an all-time center back if he didn't have horrific knees. People like, I don't think people fully realize how I had a knee injury this past like few months, and it completely shifted the way I played. Completely, I was going into tackles like halfway, like with no energy.
Comparing yourself to Ledley King.
Not at all. Not at all. The point being, I could not perform to 30% of my capabilities. So the fact that he was resting for 6 days and would just show up on the match day, not have trained at all with the team, not knowing the tactics really, trying to sort of understand, being like a bit part, and then being like man of the match, man of the match, man of the match, man of the match is insane. That's like So you're talking about somebody who's performing with injuries. So can you imagine him with healthy knees, with like
if he could train,
the longevity that that footballers today have? If he had the sports science that we have today, I think we'd see a much stronger, different version of Ledley King.
It is a shame, and he only played. I've just looked it up now. He only played 21 times for England for 8 years.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's a real shame.
Yeah.
Tottenham legend, absolutely. Okay, final category. And this is a bit of a strange one to finish on, but the greatest transfer that fell through. I know you were excited post recording to tell me yours. I'll tell you mine first, and I'll save yours for last. So the pressure's on now.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Robert Lewandowski to Blackburn.
Oh, super interesting.
So he was meant to be going to Blackburn Rovers in 2010. I can't remember who them. It might have been Allardyce. I could be wrong. But his flight was cancelled due to the volcanic eruption over Iceland, and loads of flights had to get cancelled. And then suddenly, plans changed, and I can't remember if it was Dortmund he went to at the time. But the point is, Blackburn Rovers could have had Robert Lewandowski playing for them in an alternate universe. So, I mean, that is just a story of its own. I almost went for Ibrahimovic to Arsenal, but I decided to go for Lewandowski just because, you know, Blackburn
Yeah.
Lewandowski. It's just
It's an
insane to think
insane
about.
concept to think about. To think like
Yeah.
Roque Santa Cruz and Robert Lewandowski. Like what a what a strike partnership. I have gone slightly controversial, and I think it might upset you a little bit, but Gerrard to Chelsea. That him. Can you we think about like Gerrard and Lampard, and we think about the golden generation and how it didn't work. But that's in a rigid 4-4-2 system. A tactically flexible coach that Jose Mourinho was obsessed with. Jose Mourinho often
loved Gerrard.
messages players, right? Very rarely does he message opposition players. And he was after Gerrard. And so, like, I think amongst a lot of other things, Gerrard had a lot of pressure from like Liverpool ultras and Liverpool fans to stay. Along with his own desires to stay, of course. But I think without, like, I think his own desires are strong, but I think the Liverpool ultras, he'll say stuff differently. I think that is the linchpin that pushed him over more than anything. That's slightly conspiracy-esque, but I think
I also think it's the idea of his legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
Would he rather his legacy be with Liverpool fans for staying or Chelsea fans?
Yes,
were his rivals.
Mourinho's seasons typically go wrong in the third season. I think Gerrard is that good of a player that he would have bucked the trend. I think we would have seen a much stronger version of Chelsea for a longer period of time if they had.
Just imagine that midfield.
Gerrard in midfield is absolutely insane.
Gerrard in midfield
with behind him, Lampard.
Oh my word!
Terry in the back.
Michael Essien.
The depth would be absolutely insane, and like someone like Michael Essien, if he saw Gerrard, would be more than willing to be a bit part player. I guarantee it. I guarantee it, because Gerrard is that level of a player that it obviously his legacy would have changed, and there's a beauty to the thick and thin, and we don't see one club man anymore in football. So, I respect it a lot. I think there's so much to be loved to do that for a club, especially you talked about the 2009 troubles early on. Staying through that, the Juventus players that stayed after they got relegated to Serie B, like those players will be loved forever, and fair play. But
he's a footballing legend more than anything else.
Exactly.
For Liverpool fans, he's everything for Liverpool fans.
But
he's seen as the greatest player of all time, alongside like Dalglish and maybe more Salah now, as well as Rush and Sudes. But Gerrard, I typically see at the top. Yeah. And while he didn't win a Premier League, he won so much more, and that's Liverpool fans' hearts. And he was just my idol, so I could talk about him all day. So, and looking at the time, it seems like we have been talking all day. So we will end the podcast there, hour and 17. This has to be some sort of GSPN record. Eshan, thank you very much for joining me today. I mean, this has been quite a journey, if anything, more than a podcast with you.
Yeah, we went through everything. This could have been a 3-parter, let alone a 2-parter.
Oh my word, yes. Anyway, Champions League is tomorrow night, so join the boys for that one tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that episode. You have been listening to the Daily English Premier League podcast on the Global Sports Podcast Network, and I'll see you soon.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.